video, we're going to go over creating the up poses for the basic walk. So at this point, you should have your contacts, passings, and your down poses completed. The up poses are what's happening when the character is falling over before he catches his weight on the contact pose. So he's going to be very much off balance on the up poses. But we'll be creating them in a very similar method as we did our down poses because they fall between the passing pose and the contact pose. So since they fall halfway between there, we'll be getting the pose roughly placed in, and then we're using the graph editor to adjust all the curve progression. As mentioned, this is a 12 frame walk, so splitting this in half again, halfway between our passing pose and our contact pose is going to be 3 frames after that passing pose. So I have our passing here at 7, go 3 frames later. This is where our up pose is going to fall here on frame 10. Let's go ahead and check our side ortho view. And once more, we're going to start at the bottom with our supporting foot. On the up pose, the foot is starting to roll up off of the ground. So it's no longer going to be flat, it's going to have a little bit of lift heel in here. Now the amount of lift heel just needs to be less than it is on the contact that's going to follow after this. Otherwise the foot won't progress forward smoothly. So we're just adding a little bit of lift heel here as the character starts to push off of this foot. The lifted foot is going to continue forward. And we can either leave this with the toe pointed down and like decreasing the toe tip a bit, or we can completely reverse this to get rid of the toe tip and use heel, like so forth. So I'm going to stick with leaving the toe tip on and just decreasing it, and this is going to create a late flop reversal in the foot, so it doesn't flop until it gets to the between the up and the contact pose, whereas the using heel will have it flop between between the passing pose and the up pose. So it's really a matter of style of your walk, but whichever you choose to do, keep it consistent. That's the main thing. Move up to our cog and have the hips come forward, but also obviously lift up because this is our up pose. So we want to get some height on the pose there. And the arms are going to continue their swing. But this is really what we want to pretty much address here. The shoulders are at 0. The arms are continuing to swing roughly around the middle. They're just swinging through still. The supporting foot has lift heel. The lifted foot is progressing in front of the supporting leg, and we're leaving it with toe tip and toe lift. Now with that, I'm going to go ahead and key this pose. And then we're going to start adjusting things, starting with this foot. Again, much like the down pose, we want to go ahead and complete the arc of the swing as the foot comes in and then starts to step back out towards its passing pose value. Towards its contact pose value. So it comes in on the passing pose, and then we want to complete that arc and the movement. We check a look at our translate X, we can see that the foot is flatlining here, going from that passing pose to the up pose. So let's go ahead and pull this down so it starts to swing back out. Now let's move up to our cog, starting with our rotate Z. Once more, you see this flatlining here. Our rotate Z is going to be extreme on our passing pose, so again, there shouldn't be anything higher than that. If our positive value we have here is 15, then the up pose, which falls between the extreme and 0 values, should be a value of somewhere between 0 and 15. In this case, we're going to put it right across from where our down pose was. That's a good visual indicator of where we should be putting these. So I'm going to pull it down until it's pretty much right across from there. So we create this again slow out of our extreme value. We get to our down pose, slow in towards this, and then we slow out on the up pose, and then we go back into uh, the contact value down there. Rotate Y, do a very similar thing, again flatlining. Here's our extreme value up here, our zero value is there on the passing pose. So this up pose should be pretty much right across from the down pose we created later on. So we get, again, slowing into this extreme and then slowing out on the down pose before it goes to 0. Translate X, handle it the same way. Going to pull it down so it's pretty much right across from our down pose and create some slow out. Now let's check our Translate Z, which is our forward momentum. We really want to check this in our cog to make sure the character is not going to hitch up and it actually continues forward. You can see, looking at here, since this passing pose is in balance and our contact's in balance, this one is favoring our passing pose a little bit too much, and then it's going to shoot forward. So let's pull this up a little bit so it's about halfway. And at this point, let's switch over to our ortho front view, because again, our end goal is going to be keeping the head facing straight forward and level. Don't want any head wobbling in the scene. So rotate Z, translating it up so it's between our extreme and our zero values. So that's where our up pose is going to be there. Rotate Y, down here, so it's between 0 and the extreme values. Again, right across from where our down pose was. We go to the mid back and repeat. And lastly, our neck. And our head is indeed level and facing straight forward. That's exactly what we wanted, and we want to make sure that nothing is locking out on the characters, not the legs not locking out or the arms aren't locking out, and so forth. Now again, not super stressing over the arm positioning, because as we get to our final finessing, I'm going to come back in here and handle this using straight ahead and adjust their posing there. But let's go ahead and key this, make sure everything's marked, and then now we have our first up pose. Squash, passing, up, contact. Let's check the movement of that foot, see how it's looking. It comes a bit too far forward. You see, it doesn't really have much to go from the passing to the, from the up pose to the contact pose, but really shoots far forward from the passing to the up pose. So we may want to consider pulling it back a little bit here. Or coming higher up with it. Just to adjust the spacing. But now let's try that again with our second up pose, which will be on frame 22. This time we're going to increase our lift heel on our supporting foot. Lifted foot is going to continue translating forward, going to decrease the toe tip a bit, and then our hips are going to translate up and forward while our arms continue to swing through. And from there, let's key this and then start finessing things. So lifted foot, check our translate X, so it continues that arc. Cog, start with the rotate Z. It's going to be progressing between our extreme and zero values. Rotate Y. Again, makes it much easier when you're right across from our down pose. Translate X, and our translate Z, our forward movement. You can see still heavily favoring this back part here, the passing pose. So let's shift it so a bit more even. And then move up to our back controls. Working our way up and making sure that they progress between the extreme and 0 values. Check our front ortho view. We get towards the top to make sure that our head is going to be straightforward and level. And once we have that, we can again lift up our hips or use this to make our character get some more height on his up pose. And then watch out for the IK locking out. And key this. Alright, now to create any further up poses, we would copy this forward just like we did with the passing poses. So if you find you need to create more up poses in your scene, review the passing pose podcast because it goes over how to copy forward those poses as well, and it's handled the exact same way. Now let's check a final look at our curve progression and see what's going on. Here we have our finalized curve progression. Rotate Z is going to be 0 on our contact poses, and extreme on our passing pose, and on the down and up pose it progresses between those values. Rotate Y is going to be the extreme on our contact pose, 0 on our passing pose, and again on the down and up poses it falls between those values. And then translate X is going to be 0 on our contact, extreme on our passing, and that did not handle. Make sure that was fixed because again we had flatlining there. So again, this is why we check our work to make sure that all those things are being progressing correctly. But have 0 on our contact, extreme on our passing, and the down and up fall between those. Up our back, and again you start to see this the stair step Mayan pyramid kind of thing happening on this as well. I'll rotate Z and I'll rotate Y. So this is setting up our slow in and slow out by having the down and up poses favor the extremes. That's going to be important. And then keeping track of where your 0 values and extreme values are. So once you have all your poses in, now we can start doing the finessing, such as adding the foot roll and adjusting the spacing on the arm swing. And we'll be handling that in our next video. Thanks for watching.